What I have learned out of my 27 years of teaching and leading in different ways is that I just surround myself with much smarter people and let them do the work because they are very bright. And in many cases, I just try and find places to empower them to be able to do extraordinary things and get out of their way. If I was talking to my 25-year-old self, I'd say the same thing and start doing that earlier than maybe when I started to figure that out when I was in my late 30s and 40s. That's probably what I would say. I think the final thing I would say to them is leadership is fun. It's messy. It's tiring. It's hard. You have every range of emotion that goes through you when you're in at a leadership position. And yet you get to make a difference and you get to do things for other folks that down the road have monumental effects that you might never see, but that's what you get to do. And it's a great place to work.
Leadership is fun. I do not recall ever hearing that exact phrase before. Maybe I have, I've just forgotten, but it was a wonderful reminder from Mark Pearmain that he enjoys what he's doing and he calls it out in such a way. And Mark is somebody that I've gotten to know a little bit more over the past 2 or 3 months, and it's been a real joy. He exudes a calmness and a disposition that serves him and his community so well. And I think what's interesting, I didn't tell him this in our conversation, we talk about the fact that I've known the previous two superintendents, both Mike McKay, Jordan Tinney, and now Mark. And Jordan especially, but even the little bit I got to know Mike, they all kind of carry that kind of vibe to them. They just are very together people and yet genuine. It's not like they're putting on a facade. Mark's very easy to talk to, very easy to get to know, very personable, very calm. He does such a wonderful job of letting you know genuinely why he loves to do what he's doing, why he loves Surrey School District, what he's proud of. And at the same time, we talk about the hard part of leadership. Episode really covers the gamut of what it means to be a school leader, and Surrey School District is in very good hands with Mark Pearmain, and I hope you enjoy our conversation today. I want you to describe very quickly your golf game.
Game would be a lot of the course because sometimes I will, a little hard slice to the left. Pretty good holes where I figure like I'm getting it, and then I'll just like completely implode. And usually by the 17th or 18th, gods will give me a nice kind of string of 3 or 4 shots with a good chip and a putt, and I'll be like, "Oh, okay, I'll come back." That's
You're like 95% of golfers
yeah.
in the world. You're just in that same vein. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. And also you revealed the fact that you're a lefty.
I'm a lefty on the
I
golf
missed that.
course. My biggest learning out of the game of golf has been that I don't worry about what everybody else is doing. I just worry about how I'm playing. And that took me a long time. That took me a long time to figure out. And once I figured that out, it's quite enjoyable. I find it quite social. You go out, you have a good time, make some good shots, and then the 19th hole.
Yeah. I'm the same way. That took me a while to learn. And I'm happy to play with golfers of every caliber. As long as you're fast, that's
Mhm.
important. I don't want to play with somebody slow.
Yep.
And as long as you have fun.
Yeah.
Like if you're miserable on the golf course, like just be miserable on your own. And
Yep.
unfortunately, the ones that are most miserable are usually the better players because we all think we're better than we are. That's part of the problem. We all think like I'm better than this. Yeah, you're not though. This is your game.
Oh,
Um,
how I play the golf game in my mind.
yes,
I am amazing.
I'm pretty good.
Like I am amazing.
Nice.
Yeah. But, you know,
So
doesn't always translate.
and one more question with that, because I don't know if you do this. I just see golf as having so many analogies for life. So what's your golf analogy that you could apply to either your role as a leader or your father, whatever kind of life lesson, what do you
Yeah.
extract from golf?
I remember when I was young and started to play, it was all a rush. Like I would grip the club so quickly or so hard, I should say. And then I would swing so hard. And, the key is that you kind of slow everything down. And it's no different as being a parent, right? In the mix of whatever's happening in that moment with your kid, it's like, just slow down and catch your breath look a little bit in the distance to see where you want to go, and then make your plan to get there. And no different as a leader, right? Doesn't matter if you're leading a team of two or you're leading a team of 12,000. Like, just slow things down, have your vision of where you want to get to, and then just have your plan. And sometimes your plan's going to have to change, like a golf game. You think you're going to hit a straight shot, and the next thing you know, you're 50 yards to the left and you're hitting out of trees. That's okay. You just keep your plan,
Yeah.
and you just, you don't rush it. Go slow. Go slow to go fast.
Yeah, I mean, I've probably heard variations of that one, but not quite the way you've shared it, so appreciate that. So, Mark, I have known the people sitting in your chair,
Mm.
starting with Mike McKay and then handing it off to Jordan. How did you get to that chair? So it's maybe the abbreviated version of the Mark Pearmain educational journey.
Yeah. Started off in the Vancouver system, month contract at Kitsilano Secondary School. And you know how that goes. 3 months, went to 6 months, they went to the 9 months. The year basically got a full-time job the next year, which was unheard of at the time. And then did about 20 years in Vancouver and just had a great experience, just so diverse there, up from being, a department head and then all the way through to a director of instruction. I live over in North Vancouver, so I got headhunted to go to North Van as an assistant superintendent and spend some time in my kids' schools, which was really cool when they were young to be part of that. And then a couple of years as an assistant soup, and the superintendent's job came up and was able to be successful in that competition. And so I spent 5.5 years, 6 years as superintendent there. And then, which a nice meld. Like, I mean, obviously Surrey is like Vancouver. It's a very, very large, diversely spread out school district.
Mhm.
Highly, fairly political, just in the context of being the biggest in the province. A lot of similarities to North Vancouver, which, North Vancouver, there's like here, they demand innovation. They demanded the fiscally responsible so we could invest back into the system and be thoughtful of how we did that. So I kind of took my two experiences between Vancouver from the political piece and the diversity piece, and from a board and a system that had money to be able to think creatively, and came over here into Surrey, and it's been the perfect marriage, which has been lovely.
So something you said that struck me that I'm wondering about. So you said you were director of instruction in Vancouver, and what I've noticed in British Columbia specifically, and you can speak to British Columbia and or beyond that, is the number of superintendents, school leaders who have a very strong pedagogical background.
Mm.
It's not true everywhere. There are many leaders who have to defer a lot of the pedagogical conversations to their colleagues. They have other strengths, but
Yep.
pedagogy and instruction is not one of them. So I don't know if my question is just a observation of that seems interesting to me. Obviously, it doesn't hurt you in your role. It helps you. But what can you say about your colleagues and that kind of
Mm.
deep knowledge of instruction that maybe because you don't compare it to those that don't have it. How would you position that as being obviously it's a point of strength, but in what ways, I guess?
Yeah. Well, maybe it's a philosophy, and I've never thought about it from the BC context. But if you think of a principal, right, that's your prime teacher. So, when I certainly was in Vancouver, expectation was that you were like a master at your craft of teaching. We're kind of looked at being, becoming a VP and learning some of the administrative side, and, never lost the fact that that's where you came from. So that certainly is our perspective here in Surrey, looking for prime teachers who have excelled in children in various forms, And I think really what that comes down to, for me here, is that role of a superintendency. But I'm a teacher at heart. I just happen to be, in a different context at this point in time. So when kids ask me, what's my job? What do you do? I relate it back to, well, actually, I'm just the principal. I'm just the principal of the school district, So the kids can understand what that context
Right.
means for them, for their school. And when I think of the principals in our schools, they're in our classrooms, right? They're in there alongside teachers. In some cases, they're actually teaching because they're going to be, filling failure to fill. in our current context, but they are leading the pedagogical move that we want to see in BC. And I would say, Dean, that, we still have work to do, but it's also, I would suggest, one of the reasons why we've had success in shifting our entire system into a competency-based education system, and why, we still perform well when it comes to scale assessments, but also doing it in a way that's different from just the drill and skill, right? Really looking at that concept of communication and critical thinking and collaboration and big ideas. So, focusing on numeracy and literacy. And I take
Right.
that back to the teachers, and I take that back to the admin and to the district staff that are all highly trained and teachers in their role.
So in your, relatively early tenure at the district, it's what, 2 years now?
Coming years in about 2 weeks. So I can't say I'm
Okay.
new anymore.
Yeah. Well, right. But when you first came to Surrey and even in that first year or two, when you looked at the district, what were you most proud of to think, wow, these folks are really getting this and doing this particular thing really well? What would you hold up as being the thing you need to know about Surrey School District is, and now you get to brag a little bit.
Mhm. Well, what I would say is that we're a school district of 83,000 students and 13,000 staff. So let's just say combined in terms of in our buildings, 96,000, individuals, human beings. It's small, and there's a connectivity. And so while I'll certainly not say that I know everybody's name, when I go into a building, I feel the community in our schools, and I can see the community amongst our principals and vice principals, even though that's 297 people, right? And I think, from a large system that sometimes can become a machine, like large systems, I'm really, really proud of how the Surrey School District, and I want to give obviously credit to Jordan and Mike and the folks before them, have created that culture, which is we're all together, we're all part of it. We just happen to be growing in a little bit of size at this point in time. I think the other thing that I am really proud of, we've got beautiful diversity in our school district. So diversity of kids, diversity of languages, diversity of culture, of expertise, and it's celebrated. Like, we have work to do. It's not to suggest we're
Mhm.
perfect, because we're not. But what I see is a genuine desire to continue to embrace all that come in, because we're a landing pad for many new Canadians, meet success, celebrate them as individuals, and celebrate them as part of our big system, which makes us better. And it's amazing to experience when you see it, especially at our school. It's
Well,
remarkable.
people always are curious about the work I do across Canada. And I would say in the past, certainly 10 years, Surrey has been a big part of my career. And I feel that what you've said about that community, like it doesn't feel big. It feels like people are very,
Mhm.
well, I don't know, folksy is the right word or whatever it is. But yeah, you feel, and it's welcoming, right? They're happy to have you. And there's an air of, we're very proud of what we've done and who we are, but we're curious to learn more. Like, what else could we do? There's that genuine desire to grow. And so that speaks to that embracing of diversity. Oh, this is a new person. This is a new idea. We hadn't thought about this. How could you help us be better and grow? What a powerful culture. I understand that there's with that many people, maybe not everybody would say it exactly the same way, but generally speaking, and I just haven't in all the schools and people I've run into across your district, I just haven't run into people that I would go like, this person doesn't belong here because they're no, everybody kind of carries that a real positive, caring vibe, if you will. We just before we hit record, you were talking about a challenge that you're facing in your district that you just have had a meeting with principals, and that is
Yeah.
teacher shortage. This is an issue that is not a Surrey issue for sure. It's not even a British Columbia issue. This is a worldwide issue right now. Just talk a little bit about what the challenges are, what you see as sort of the potential risks and opportunities when it comes to our current teacher shortage.
Yeah. Well, I think I want to start by saying, some of our colleagues up north have been dealing with this for 10 years. right? And so it's getting way more kind of media interest and media play because it's also hitting kind of the metro area, and so I think there's lots to learn from our northern colleagues and how to support them at the same point in time. I think what we're seeing, Dean, is that, around the world, you've got boomers who are retiring and shifting demographics of folks who are coming into the system. And, traditionally time 1.0 FTE position when that was offered to a new teacher was jumped on. But the reality is that we're seeing, our new folks coming in have a different perspective on work-life balance and may not want a full-time and they want part-time. And so there's a little bit of a mind shift. I think that employers have to kind of get their minds wrapped around as we kind of enter in with the new workforce. I think the other thing that we're seeing is that, previously in the past, we could go and recruit out of Alberta or Saskatchewan or Newfoundland or France or England or wherever. And, you'd have folks that would come. The reality is that we're now competing with Alberta, Saskatchewan, Newfoundland, France, UK, Australia, New Zealand. Like everybody is in this position. And so I think we're kind of getting to this place of, well, what does it look like moving forward? Like if you can't get people to come in and if your workforce is changing, what does that look like for an employer? And how do you become a of choice? Right. And, we've also made a commitment here in Surrey that, we are really focused on ensuring that we have quality certified teachers in all of our classrooms. Districts have the luxury of trying to meet that goal, and our northern colleagues have LO letter of permissions for folks who are not certified in some of their classrooms. So, part of our discussion today was that if that's our goal, how do we reach that goal? What does that look like for us? And what does that look like, not next year, but 2, 3, 4 years out as we continue to grow at 2,200 kids a year and add staff? And, as I know, and better to get many brains thinking about challenges and opportunities than it is just one. And
Right.
so that's what we kind of pose today, just to have a conversation and a question, down the road, what do you think? What can we do?
One of the things I think that is specific to British Columbia, Metro Vancouver is it's expensive to live. So as you're recruiting
Yep.
and you have no control over the salaries, that's already established. And, there's many ways in which they've said actually British Columbia salaries relative to their cost of living is one of the lowest in Canada, right? If you kind of factor in how much it costs to live there, how much does that play into your thinking around, well, how can we recruit people and be an employer of choice
Yep.
in terms of incentives or something that says, yes, it costs a lot to live here, but you should still come here because beyond just being a great place to work, are the things you can tangibly do to address that? I guess is my question.
Well, flip that on its head. I would say that British Columbia is an amazing place to teach in. System, as you've described, as in terms of Surrey, is that, you know, we are constantly curious about how we can improve our craft. And we are constantly curious in terms of things differently and better. And we're not afraid, I would say, to call out where we're not doing well. Right. So British Columbia has been very clear as a province and as school districts, we're not serving Indigenous students to the same way that we're serving others. And we have to improve that. Similar when it comes to racial equity, right? Like, we need to name the fact that there's challenges and challenges that some of our kids go through. And so we're going to name it, we're going to own it, we're going to work on it together. So I would turn that around and just, part of, I think for anybody who is thinking of coming here, yes, house prices, it's a different world out here when it comes to house prices. It's also a beautiful place to live, but you
Mhm.
also are going to be coming into a system wherever you choose to land in British Columbia, regardless if it's up north or if it's down here in the metro region or up in the Okanagan. You're working in a system that genuinely is, on a continual cycle of improvement. regardless of which government we have in place, because the system itself is there to serve our communities and our kids. And it's a pretty inspiring place to be. And, you know, I've had the pleasure of going to different systems, just partly because of being in Surrey and other professional development opportunities. And you certainly see that in other areas, but it's not always the norm, right?
Yeah.
And that's a space that when start to dive in about what's going on here, it's it is something that pulls them along. And that's frankly speaking, as when you say, an employer of choice, that's one of them. There's tons of opportunities here
Sure.
in Surrey, right? Like there's
Yeah.
so many schools, there's so many different types of schools, there's leadership opportunities. Like we have a dearth of those. So I'm not worried about that. Our story is come be part of our school district and come be part of our system, which is pretty, I would suggest, pretty unique world.
Yeah. No, and listen, I have said essentially the same things to people. It's one of the best places to work. I guess you have to double down on that on that as being your unfair advantage, if you will. Like this
Yep.
is why you want to work here. You won't get rich. We will tell you that. However, but to speak to your earlier point of people's desire for workplace wellness, that has to be something that you have to say,
Yep.
right? We're not putting you in a fire. And again, listen, teaching is hard. Doesn't matter where you are. It's not an easy job. So I guess my advice is to charge your marketing department to figure out a way to continue to tell that story and communicate that
Yeah.
in more and more ways, which I know is there. I think that is your key to finding all of these amazing people, which you've been doing.
Well, listening or watching this, and if you're interested in coming to BC, reach out to Surrey. We are happy to have a conversation. And if there's different ways we can help you get you here, we're interested in seeing what we could do.
There you go. And I'll vouch. I'll vouch. It would be a great place to teach. This episode is brought to you by Advanced Learning Partnerships, also known as ALP. We are a professional learning consulting group that serves communities across North America. We are partners, designers, and agents for change. You can learn more about the work we do at alplearn.com. And now back to the show. So there you are. So we've kind of talked about some of indirectly challenges, but I would love you to share a leadership challenge, and it could be from your past tenures and so forth, that like when you look back on, you think that was difficult. Like that was the shot that was 50 yards into the trees, and I had to figure out a way to get out of there. And maybe it wasn't pretty, but I did it, and I learned a lot from that time. So do you have one of those that you can draw upon and share with us?
Yeah. When I was in North Vancouver, um, we we worked really hard with rights holders, so Squamish Nation and Tsleil-Waututh Nation, um, in the district, certainly when it comes to reconciliation, but also in terms of supporting Indigenous students. And, unfortunately, there was a comment made at a public board meeting, which was interpreted quite divisively from the nations. And, working with the board chair and certainly with the leaders of the nation in terms of how to support um, the school district in its work. How do we continue to build trust and maintain trust? Because trust can be lost, right? And also understanding how to move forward in that. And what I would say is that um, that's territory that for me was completely uncharted. I didn't know how to do that. Um, but what I would say is that we had very gracious partners when it comes to the leadership of both nations. Um, they were not easy conversations. They were difficult conversations. They were raw in some cases. But out of that came some commitments that the school district made to continue when it comes to our journey as both a district, as a governing body, to learn and to be open to improving our own understanding. And what it really taught me was it's about humility and humbleness and listening. right? Like, isn't a comment that was attributed to me, it doesn't matter who it was attributed to. There was just a space that it needed to be acknowledged and then listened to. And then from there, what's the collective work we could do together? And, sometimes I talked before about you go slow to move fast. You need to go slow and you need to sit in that uncomfortableness and you need
Yeah.
to sit in that space where it's like, oh, I don't quite know how this is going to play out, but I I have a positive perspective that it will play out the way it's meant to play out. And I'm going to kind of release control over what I think that's going to be. And you come to a pretty good place, but it's hard to do that. Right. And I will say
Well,
this, like for many of us, we're type A or we're drivers, right? Like
yeah.
we're in these different types of leadership roles for reasons. And so letting go of the outcome is sometimes a a foreign concept for some of us to do. But it was an amazing experience that really I learned a ton. I think the district eventually got to a really good place with it. And that certainly, when I left the school district, the relationships with Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh were very strong and honest, which is, I think, where you want to be with rights
Yeah.
holders.
A good reminder for everyone, myself included. I don't know if it's a male thing, but like we just want to fix the problem. So how can we fix this as quickly as possible? And obviously that would not have gone well if that was your only intentions to fix it, because I think that idea of sitting with the struggle, with the discomfort often has to be part of the process. That's a powerful story and a great lesson. And so you've shared again a number of lessons already that you're sharing, but I'm going to ask you to talk to a 25-year-old educator who
Mm.
you've identified, or maybe they've identified an interest in leadership. And I know this was actually a conversation that we had the other night at dinner around sometimes people look at other people's job and say, "No, thank you. I don't want that job." But let's presume for a moment that we've identified somebody that, well,
Yep.
maybe I would like to take on more responsibility roles. What advice, besides all the great advice you've already kind of laid out, what else would you say to them about, like, here's what you need to think about in order to sort of prepare yourself for a career in leadership?
Yeah. So the first thing I would ask him is like, why do you want it? Right. So if you're wanting it because of titles or if you're wanting it because of a perceived, concept of authority or power or whatever, it's just like, well, park that. Um, and what I would say to them is your job that you're in now, do it extremely well. Don't worry about trying to get to the next level or trying to do something different. Because as you just described, people will notice. And when people notice, you're going to be given opportunities. And if you're open to the opportunities, then you'll see that you'll have different experiences, which you're going to learn and grow from. So my first thing that I would say to them is, frankly speaking, nobody likes a shiny penny, right? If you're going to do something, do it for the right reasons, and then you'll get noticed for the right reasons. The second thing I would say is that if you have the opportunity to go into positions where you get to lead people, what we talked about earlier is that brains are thinking about a problem, you're going to find a much better solution. And it's irrelevant if it's your idea or if it's somebody else's idea. If it's the right idea, then acknowledge where it's come from. And if you happen to be in the leadership role, then acknowledge it and use that idea. Don't own it. Don't make it yours. Just it's the right place to go. Because what I have learned out of my, I don't know, whatever it is, 28 years or 27 years of and leading in different ways. I just surround myself with much smarter people and let them do the work because they are very bright. And in many cases, I just try and find places to empower them to be able to do extraordinary things and get out of their way. And if I was talking to my 25-year-old self, I'd say the same thing and start doing that earlier than maybe when I started to figure that out when I was in my late 30s and 40s. That's probably what I would say. I think the final thing I would say to them is it's fun, it's messy, it's tiring, it's hard, You have every range of emotion that you go in that goes through you when you're in at a leadership position. And yet you get to make a difference and you get to do things for other folks that, down the road have monumental effects that you might never see, but that's what you get to do. And it's a place to work.
I rarely, if ever, heard anybody say leadership is fun. I'm glad you said that though. I mean, and honestly, like we're sometimes in education, we're so scared of using fun because it doesn't sound academic. It doesn't sound as, insightful as it is. But why can't it be? Like, why can't it just be like it's fun?
It is fun.
I mean, Tuesday, I had fun. Like that whole day of working with all the leaders across Metro Van and watching people engage, having
Yep.
conversations, some tough ones, like really like, ooh, that's really like you can have fun in the midst of the struggle, in the midst of the complexities. Like that can be like I love Malcolm Gladwell has a quote that says, ideas and dissonance should bring you joy.
Hmm.
It's like, yeah, this is interesting. Like, let's talk more about that. I mean, somewhere along the line there, Mark, you have developed sort of a healthy combination of self-awareness, but also perspective that enables you to do that. Because I think that's where I think leadership has failed in terms of recruiting new leaders because leaders have presented and I get it's hard, but have presented themselves as this is too hard for me to do, and I can't, like, I'm struggling, right? And I listen, I empathize with it. I don't want to say it's not that way, but I don't know if it's mindset shift or what it is. But like, I'm curious, like, how do we get there that place where you can actually use the phrase leadership is fun?
Well, I think it's part of it when people ask us how it's going, right? How's it going? Probably the initial reaction is like, oh boy, let me tell you what I got to deal with now,
Super busy,
right?
super busy,
Super busy.
right?
I think part of it is just actually us changing the description of what we do, right? And I'd actually say that for the entire education system. Like I think in many
Yes.
times we always talk about what needs to be worked on and looked at, and we need to continue to talk about that, but we also need to acknowledge that and it's a really good system. And kids are actually having amazing experiences every single day. And it's not to suggest that all kids are, because not all kids are, and that's what we're working on. But let's also acknowledge the great work that folks are doing and the system's doing. So that would be number one. But I guess like I'm a big skier, Dean. Like I really love to ski. I've skied since I was a very young kid. And so, when I go up on the mountain and I'm on a very steep, tight pitch, let's say, or run, and I'm at the top of that thing. So there's gonna be a little bit of fear, right? And then you're gonna get into the actual run and you're gonna start to ski it. And it's gonna get hard because your legs are gonna burn and your quads are killing you, but you can't really stop because it's too narrow. So you gotta push all the way through. So then it's taxing. I'm breathing heavy. But when I push through and I get to the bottom and I stop, I realize A, I accomplished something, and B, that was a lot of fun. And I just think it's the mindset of actually taking a look at whatever it is. It doesn't matter if it's changing a school growth plan or working with a challenging student who's just not thriving, or working with parents that are disagreeing with the decision. It's at that end moment when you get to the conclusion, and you've made that breakthrough. In the end, that is
Yeah.
that is a that is a fun experience. It is hard, it's taxing, it's tiring, and all the rest of it. But you've made a change and you've learned. And I just think that that piece for us is, and it was fun because the next time through, I know I can do it. I'm going to push maybe a little bit harder in this zone, and maybe I'll throw in a little hop off a cliff just for fun. See if I can land it.
So what I do in this podcast is I try to give each podcast a title that's in the form of a question. And so I've already got my title for this one, and it is Can Leadership Be Fun?
There you go.
That's what the title of this one's gonna be. That's great. I'm so glad we delved into that further because listen, I see a lot of people, great leaders who look like they're having fun. But it's almost a fundamental difference between good leaders and great leaders. The great leaders look like they're having fun at their work. And again, I'm generalizing. I know that. But that's my observation. When I look at somebody say, I think I'd like their job, it's because it looks like they're enjoying what they're doing. They seem to thrive, right? They're not glossing over the challenges. You can't just talk about all the awesome stuff.
Oh,
That's just not reality. There's problems every single day that people need support with, and you've acknowledged and they emerge, all that stuff. That's a big part of the job, right? But it's important. And while I'm not a skier, I love the analogy of looking back and saying, wow, that was awesome. That opportunity to celebrate, to reflect, and remind people when you went through a thing. Wasn't that fun? Didn't we have a good time doing that one? Maybe people don't use those same words, but I think you get to the same
I think you get to the same
feeling.
place. I also think that, especially for folks in senior leadership positions, like be it a director of instruction or a director in Ontario or superintendent here, like don't take yourself too seriously. Right. And personally speaking, if you don't take yourself too seriously and you show your own personality to your team and you show your insecurities to your team, or you go like, I really don't know how to do this. Well, first off, you're going to be way more real. To believe, secondly, that people can see the fact that, okay, it is hard, but it's fun and you can laugh about things. Right.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
And, you know, like anything, I'll go back to it. I try and surround myself with way smarter people than me and let them do their work. And if I can do that, which I've got here and I had in North Van,
yeah,
a really good place. And personally speaking, many brains to think about challenges and opportunities. That is fun because it's super creative. And then it's like, okay, now how do we implement
yeah.
that? What do we do?
That's right.
Those are great conversations to have, right?
So you've kind of set yourself up for this question, which I'll just tell you right now, it's hard. This is a hard question. You're not really even going to like it,
Okay.
but I want you to name one person, not 10,
Yep.
one person that you are grateful for. And I want it to be a person that will potentially listen to this, hear their name being spoke. This could be anybody in your past, your present, whatever, something that happened today, anything. So knowing that you would love to list hundreds of people, but today you just get to list one.
Yeah. I'm going to go back to when I first started teaching. I started teaching at Kitsilano Secondary School, and the principal's name there was Dwayne Woodside. We knew him as Woody, and into a building that the parents loved the principal, the students loved the principal, the staff loved the principal. Such a sense of community and such a sense of empowerment that if you to do something, it would be like, well, how high do you want me to jump? Right. And it was the experience of everybody was in the same canoe, paddling in the same direction. And we were paddling so hard that the canoe was almost lifting out of the water. We were like on a plane. I'd never experienced that before. And that was my first experience in a school. He showed me what it was all about in terms of empowering other people to do things, because he was a senior principal, seasoned vet, always door open, out in the hall, ask you about how things about were with you. And that has grounded me in my entire professional career of how I hope my team experiences me. Because I felt
Yeah.
as a brand new teacher who knew nothing really, felt fully part of that team and trusted. And by year 2 or year 3 was been giving opportunities that were way above my experience level. But he saw something in me and believed in it and said, let's do it together and give it a rip. Never forget it. It's grounded me for life. And I only wish that folks had that experience that I have.
Yeah. And that's, a lot of us have all those kind of people that we think about often in terms of like there was so much inspiration and wisdom shared there. So nobody gets to where we are today by themselves.
No.
It's about the people that we surround ourselves with. So great story. All
Yeah.
right. Home stretch here. Home
Okay.
stretch. What are you reading and listening to today? Or listening to?
What I'm reading, I suppose.
Yep.
So Power, Private Influence by Tom. So General Ottawa did quite a bit of work kind of on NAFTA and kind of that sphere of influence that you can have. Super interesting read, frankly, to read stuff that's outside of K to 12. There's
Yeah.
so much reading that we do anyways in here. So, and I pick up different aspects of leadership out of it. So that's what I'm currently reading. Probably the best book that I've read recently that really resonated is called Boys in the Boat. It's about the 1936 Washington Huskies rowing team and these kids coming together and being part of a team, right? Lifting the boat out of the water by just working together. And great metaphor about, you can be the most powerful person or the strongest person. But if the rest of your teammates can't actually, if your row rate, the boat's not going to go anywhere. So you might need to actually tone down your row rate and let us rise. And philosophically, that really meshed for me. So those are the about two most recent books that I'm reading. I'm still in the other one. It's a little bit of a heavier read, but it's good.
Right. Okay. What about okay, so put the book away. I'm not Mark Pearmain, superintendent. I'm just like a dad, whatever. What do you watch sort of guilty pleasure just to sort of escape a little bit? Cause you got to have a little bit of time just to sort of something dumb or I don't want necessarily mindless, but
Yeah. I'm a
not
big
to learn.
I'm a big fan of those Jack Ryan on Amazon, and
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
so interesting to me because I remember watching those Jack Ryan movies back when in the 80s and 90s when with Ford and
Yeah.
different folks, and then even reading the books. So it's something, I don't know, maybe it just takes me back to when I was a young kid. I like the clandestine stuff of it, and it's mindless, but it also makes you think a little bit. Good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you gotta have those. Everybody sort of has their own little one in that genre, whether it's the Tom Cruise stuff or the
Totally.
Jason Bourne, like, yeah,
Yeah.
like just some there.
Yeah.
And it's formulaic, which is fine. I know how it's gonna go. But that's okay. What the same people
Good.
that's the same reason why people like a Hallmark movie,
That's
right? Like
right.
there's no surprises here. I don't want a surprise.
That's right. It's mindless because there's so many surprises
Yes,
in the work that I do. I don't need any more
that's right.
surprises in the television
Right. I
shows.
want to know this is all gonna work out. I just want to know how it's gonna end here.
Exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
Last question, and I know you live in North Van, and so you can answer this from however you want. North Van could be Surrey perspective, it could be Greater Vancouver, but we had a colleague, Adam Gary, was his first time to Vancouver, and he did some things that most people probably would do.
Yep.
But I want you to give us a tip for somebody like that for the non-traditional, maybe less obvious hidden gem experience, place to go in whatever part of your world you want to share. So just give me a little tip about, hey, you probably might not see this on your first Google search of things to do but check this out.
So what I would say would be in Canyon Park, there's a hike that you can take. You can hike into Norvan Falls is what it's called. And you will be out of civilization in about 10 minutes and you're midst of a full forest. And then you finally come across a 35-foot waterfall with a swimming pool there that you can get into. But you got to work for it, right? You can't go in flip-flops. But unlike Stanley Park and unlike kind of the seawall, which is a little pristine, this is going to get you into the woods and you'll smell that really crisp, clean,
Yeah.
scrubbed air. And then as you get closer, you can hear it. And then you can start to feel a little bit on your face. And hot summer day, like we've been having in the summers, it's pretty nice to pop into that pool because it's fresh, clean water. That's what I would
Well,
say to do.
that's a great share. Way better than Chris Kennedy saying to go to White Spot for something.
We need
You
to help him branch out on his selections.
Well, I always make fun of. I said, you have this sort of claim as being one of the most innovative educator leaders in the province in the world, and yet that's what you pick for a restaurant. So anyway, that's all. That's another
I'm going to give you
good
some insight
conversation.
though for the white spot in West Van is closing down, so his world's being rocked a little bit.
Yes, yes, he did send me that. I think I could see a tear coming out of his eye. Anyway, hey Mark, this was great. It was great this whole week to kind of get to know you a little bit better, and so many really cool things you shared here today. So I'm excited to share this with everybody. So thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, and we'll talk soon.